when you have to, you're seeing how everyone else is doing what's wrong. That I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm autistic, so I'm kind of having a hard time wording what I want to say here.
Oh, take your time.
No, you're doing fine.
When you're judging others, okay, when you look at others and saying, oh, gay marriage is wrong, okay, when you come from a religious background, the problem that I have with the religious in this part, and that's why I'm no longer religious, one of the many reasons, is that you're focusing on judging everyone else because the quote-unquote God told you that you're supposed to judge others. Okay, but the problem with that is every Christian I know, they're judging others, but they're not listening to what they need to fix in their own lives, so they wind up becoming the most judgmental people on the planet.
Kind of like Pat Robertson.
And I just, very much so, okay? I used to listen to that guy growing up, and it's like now, I tuned him out when I became a teenager. I just couldn't deal with him. But it's just, the Bible puts, so if you literally take the Bible the way it's written, which is what I was taught to do, then I have to disagree with the previous guy and say, yes, there are contradictions, because the problem is that there's no way, logically, there is no way that you can say, oh, well, it's not a contradiction, it's just that it's God's will. No, it is a contradiction for the simple reason that, I'll take one example that I know on the top of my head that drives me crazy. I'm married to a black guy. In the Old Testament, Sepphoris, which is the high priest Aaron's grandson, God told him to murder the husband and the wife, the bride and the groom, at the wedding party. Okay, the groom was an Israelite. I'll get it, and the wife was from a different country. She was not part of quote-unquote God's people, which contradicts itself because we're all God's people if there really is a God in the first place. But regardless of that fact, so he goes in and he murders them. Okay, then you go to the Old Testament again and the New Testament, and both the Ten Commandments says thou shalt not kill. Okay, so I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the guy previous saying that that it's not a contradiction, it's just God's will, that your son's sick or this happens or that happens. It is a contradiction for the simple reason you can't have a leader that says, do as I say but not as I do. I mean, that wouldn't even fly. The way I look at it, that wouldn't even fly in our military. You go to, I mean...
Did we lose her?
I'm not sure. I can't tell.
Did we lose you, Chica?
It still says she's on, but it doesn't look like she's on. So, okay. Anyway, so
well,
yeah,
she's essentially right.
Mm-hmm.
Her larger point was that there are inherent contradictions in what God in the Bible tells people to do versus how God acts, which is a whole problem. There's actually a really great graphic of that if you look for it. Do a Google image search for contradictions in the Bible and find that image. It's amazing. Yeah, there's lots of stuff like that. And they explain it away with, well, he created us and therefore he can do what he wants with us, like we're little G.I. Joe figures or whatever, which is such a weird infantile way of thinking about what a supreme deity should be. But I don't know.
Scott has an entire book of biblical errancies.
Yeah, there's a dictionary. No, the
We
Encyclopedia
got some good
of
reading.
Biblical Errancy.
That was it.
And then there's the book your church does not want you to read, both of which talk about the accuracy of the Bible. Now, the Bible has been how many times has it been rewritten and interpreted and translated over the past 2,300 years? It's you can't really trust that the original message is actually being given out. It was actually a message that was decided upon in 325 AD by the Council of Nicaea under Constantine I, who actually told all these religious leaders to get together and make a book to guide the religious beliefs. So I'm sorry, it's really hard for me when you have a whole bunch of Romans that are basically the first paid publishers to decide how the Holy Book is going to work for the rest of the generations. I have a problem with that.
How about all the women that
The
are
thing that
such
drives me
diehard religious, and they're like, "Oh, what's First Timothy? Why don't you fucking read up a bit?" Even I know First Timothy, and I'm an atheist. God made me this way.
Well, that's because I constantly complain about it. Yeah, it's just, you know.
The thing that drives me nuts about.
Go ahead.
The thing that drives me nuts about the reinterpretation thing is that, the same people who say that, King James Version or the NIV is the inherent literal translation and exactly what God wanted you to hear. These same people complain about changes in language over their lifetime, right? They complain about text speak and emoji and it's like, you understand language changes, so stuff's gonna be wrong in there from whatever it was originally intended to say. That's just a fact. You need to accept that.
Right. Yeah, and we need people to understand that. Let's see, the King James Version, that was. Which version of it where they broke off? That was the King of England that broke off.
Don't look at me. I have no idea.
You're talking about the split between Catholicism and Protestantism?
Yeah. You had Martin Luther. He nailed his 99 edicts or whatever to the chapel, and that's when the Protestant church became, a thing. And then I think the King James Version of the Bible actually wasn't that actually that king had them make the King James Version? That way they had their own Bible that was different than the original from the Catholic Church. I don't know.
He
to me, it's just too much
and
stuff.
He was a monarch. So of course he wanted to make it look like there should be a central power structure because that was his thing.
Yeah, that's kind of what kings and queens do. Funny how that works.
Yeah, that's their job.
Yeah, that's what they do is they rule, and they don't like it when other people's rules over whatever. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about it. But yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, we have so many different interpretations, even now. Okay, there's so many different interpretations from a personal level on the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Third Amendment, all the different amendments, how things are supposed to work, the whole idea that this is a Christian nation when it actually isn't.
It never has been.
But I understand that. But the problem is that people define that based on their own beliefs, even though the masses don't agree with it. You have a lot of people that are out there, the Christians, that say this is a Christian nation. But the whole intent of the Constitution was to separate religion from government. Thomas Jefferson, in his letter to the, who was it? The Connecticut Baptist.
Not John the Baptist.
John the Baptist was a few years earlier than that. No, he wrote a letter to the Baptist Church of Connecticut, I think, and he actually specifically talked about how it was important to keep a wall of separation between church and state because the church thought that the government was going to try to dictate how they did their own worship and stuff. So that's the basis of our Constitution is to keep it so that we have a secular government. And then in the 50s, of course, with the Knights of Columbus and the Cold War and those communists and atheist communists, they were able to push the Christian idea. That's how we ended up with Under God and the Pledge of Allegiance. How we ended up with In God We Trust on our money. Was all in the 50s. So the problem is that we have society that when you repeat a lie so many times, you believe it's true, and that's what we have to work with now. Is people are repeating the same lies over and over and over and over again to the point where people now believe that it's fact, and it's not. And that's the hard part about trying to get people to stay off of that path, is to get them to understand that what they're hearing, especially on mainstream media nowadays, is bullshit. And they need to start finding more accurate sources that actually just tell the news without opinion involved. How do we do that?
That
Which
leaves out
requires
mainstream media.
That requires good education and teaching logical thinking. And
all of which we
trying
do
to
not
destroy
do in
that.
Arizona. We do the exact opposite in Arizona. We want your students to be dumb and be able to pass a test.
We want to keep everybody dumb and sick.
Yeah. So, okay, but we are coming up on the top of the hour. We're going to have to do our first couple of PSAs. So when we come back, we will
Right
go
on.
a little bit more into some of the interesting things that have popped up on the internet lately, dealing with local and state and some of the other nightmares that we have to look with.
We're not kicking you off. If you're wanting to stick around, you're willing to, Jack.
Yeah, we're not done. We still got plenty of time to talk. But it's up to you. But anyway, we're gonna kick over to our PSAs, and when we come back, we'll move on to the next interesting conversation.
Are you worried about what your money is paying for when you pay your insurance bill? How many times have you seen a company or agent helping a cause you disagree with? It happens again and again and again. Progressives who want to make sure that they are helping the issues they care about have an agent on their side. Matthew Serra is here to help you save money on your insurance and give you the comfort of mind knowing that you are supporting causes that you hold dear. To see if he can save you money, contact him at 602-753-8574. Make sure you are saving money today.
My name is Scott Pryor, chair of Arizona's LD16 Democrats. One of the things I have noticed since I became active in politics in 2012 is that people in general have increased their value of political affiliation over the value of humanity and community. Interpersonal communication has become more defined by our online communications and less defined by our face-to-face interactions. This has drastically reduced our ability to empathize with one another and find common ground to create real conversation and real solutions. If you frequent Facebook or Twitter or some of the other social media websites, you will see that many people are referring to each other as liberals or conservatives or libtards or Republicans. And many times, what starts as a real logical conversation becomes useless as people move from logical discourse to online shouting matches and name-calling. This type of behavior really must change. As chair of the LD16 Democrats, our local party will begin moving in a new direction. Instead of focusing on political change, we will begin focusing on changing ourselves and our communities. We will attempt to work together with others to help create better communication through cooperation, such as food and clothing drives, friendly competitions such as bowling, riflery, softball games, and yes, even karaoke. Our goal is to try to take the political affiliation out of the primary focus of all of our communications and start treating people as individuals, neighbors, and friends. As a gesture of this new focus, I will begin working to provide free educational seminars to the public, which will give people the proper tools necessary to not only participate in the state governmental process, but also interact with the different committees and legislators that are at the Capitol to represent us. I look forward to the future and hope that we can all begin to work together to create better solutions for all the people in our community. Okay, and we're back, folks. Thanks for listening.